I'm really excited today to be speaking with Jessica. Jessica joined the Holistic Anxiety Fix this spring and moved through the program. And we thought it'd be really fun I thought it'd be fun. I don't know if Jessica finds it fun to chat about her experience in the program and just share where she began and where she started. So welcome, Jessica.
Thank you. So, what do you want me to say? Why don't
we start by just, if you're willing to share a little bit more about what your biggest anxiety concerns were when we first started talking.
So, I guess for me, it was, I struggled a lot with, in general, I guess, being alone. And driving was huge for me. Even just a simple go to the grocery store, which is literally down over the hill from my house. I struggled with that. And once I was able, or I would get into the zone of I could do that, I would stick to that and I would stay in that bubble of, okay, I'll just go to the grocery store. I'll just go to the post office, or, when I would stay in that bubble and to leave that once I left leaving Centerville is where I live, leaving the town, I would start to get hot and heart would start to pound and I would just feel all the things that come along with anxiety, the lightheadedness and the nauseous feeling and all the thoughts going through my head of I'm going to have a panic attack and I'm going to die. And, the catastrophic thinking. And so I came in like that and
Yeah. So, I mean, you sort of raised two issues that are very prominent with a lot of the women I speak to, right? So a lot of people being alone and, driving are two of the biggest impacts that anxiety has on their life, especially, if you have kids and your husband or your partner's not home and you're sort of reliant on your wheels to get you places. It can be really, really awful to be afraid every day to get into your car.
100%. My husband it works out west, so I'm here 14 days alone with 5 kids, and so I am the one that needs to pull up my socks, and I need to do all the things. And I was reliant a lot on my mom, and she would come with me because she was like my safe person, right? And she passed away 4 years ago now. So I've had to do a lot of it alone and really battling. So when I came across you and I was pretty much at my wit's end, I was like, okay, I need to do something. Because I'm not doing myself any favors. I'm spiraling.
Okay. So you'd come on this place where you had support people at one point, and then, I'm sorry for the loss of your mom. That must have been really hard in so many ways. But it also sounds like it was hard because she was allowing you to do these things like drive, and then that loss would have had like a double significance, right?
Yeah. Definitely.
So let's talk about the program. So what was one of your biggest fears going into working with me?
Just that the unknown, I guess. That, when you go to your regular family doctor, your practitioner, they're not for going outside of the box, and they're not all that supportive. So it was, that's not going to work. Like,
right.
What you're talking about. And just, I guess the it's online. So we're working together online,
Yeah.
and you know, some people would question whether or not it's real, right?
Yeah.
Is it real? Are you uh, getting getting duped? Is it a scam, right? And so just that stuff, just the unknown, and whether or not it was going to work, because going to a doctor for the last 10 years, trying to figure out all of you know these things, and you keep nothing's working,
Yeah.
and and it can be scary to try something new, I guess. And so
Yeah. I mean, you kind of hit on a lot of things there, right? The first being that, healing outside of conventional medicine involves this mindset shift, right? Because if you've tried and it hasn't worked, which is pretty much everyone I speak with, that
mhm.
we're all about healing holistically, and you don't get that model from your primary caregiver. So if you've tried to heal and it's not working, then likely you've had this experience of like, I can't heal. There's this belief that like, I've tried what my doctor said and it
Mhm.
doesn't work. So is it even possible for me to heal? And so you have that.
Yeah.
And then you have this idea that your family doctor is saying, well, the only way to fix this is XYZ. And holistic healing sort of says, no, 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 no. Like you fix it this way and you pull in a little bit of this. And it sort of looks at it very differently. So that can be scary because we've been taught to trust conventional medicine for healing. And so looking to somebody outside of conventional medicine, like you were saying, it's sort of a scary thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I also get, are you just a scammer on the internet? One of my first clients, and
Mhm.
we laugh about it now because she gave me the third degree and she was like, are you sure you're not going to scam me? I've been scammed before. I'm like, no, do you want my registration number? Like, this is legit. But there is that,
Yes.
like, who's this woman on the internet? And like, are these claims actually real? Like, do people
Yeah.
actually heal moving through this program when, I'm told that you can't heal anxiety?
Yes. Yeah, no, I can remember like thinking that this was going to be like my new normal, that I'm just going to learn to deal with it. Like, I've had doctors look at me and say, it's all in your head. Like, you just have to learn to put it out of your mind. And so that's what I've been taught. So I was just, I'm going to live with this the rest of my life, and I'll just deal with it, I guess, even though I was absolutely miserable.
Yeah. And, that's such a profound message. It's all in your head. And when you think it's all in your head, then you change how you treat it. Because if you think it's all in your head and you have to learn to live with it, then the healing is really about coping. Like, how do I cope with this versus like, how do I heal it to eliminate it? Right. And there's a very different approach when you're doing that. So in the
Yeah.
program, let's talk about the biggest things that you learned in the program. Like, what were the big takeaways for you?
So, oh gosh, where to start? Just honestly, like, mindset was huge for me. Going and learning about the limbic system, and just taking the time that I needed to, whether it be 5 minutes or, in the morning or at night, sitting with myself and letting myself actually feel what I was
Mhm.
feeling, that like if I was tense, because I'm the type of person that I would just like push it down and push it down until it just exploded. And then it would happen in the form of a panic attack. And then, the guilt and stuff all rolls in, and all of that stuff. So mindset was huge for me. Gratitude journaling. I still do it faithfully
Nice.
every morning. Yes, every morning and every night, waking up, talking, and writing down things that I'm grateful for. writing things that I want to do that day, because if I don't, like driving, like I said, was a huge one for me. So every day I would be like, I'm going to do this. And then affirmations were so big for me too. Just saying, you know, I am calm and I am patient. I am I love driving was a huge one. I wrote that every day. I love driving. And oh gosh, just yeah, the mindset so big, and learning about that, you know, when I drive, I really am okay. I've never actually had a panic attack while driving. I've gotten very anxious before. And I mean, my experience only, but learning that it is okay to pull over and to write it out. I actually keep a book in my truck, and I can pull over for a few minutes and take a breath. And the breath that I absolutely love is the Ujjayi.
Ujjayi.
Yes, Ujjayi breath was huge for me. Still do that. I pull over, take a few breaths. Sometimes I don't even need to pull over. Sometimes I'm just driving and I do the breath as I'm going, and immediately my body reacts to it and I calm. And just writing down like, okay, you are driving, but has anything really happened to you? You know, have we always gotten to where we're going safely? Have you always gotten home safely? It might not have always been the most comfortable drive, but I've learned to celebrate the little things that I've been doing versus picking apart what I didn't do.
Right.
So that goes with the gratitude. As long as I'm doing those things, most experiences have always been positive for me. And that has been a game changer.
Yeah. So really shifting how you experience your anxiety, right? So what I'm hearing coming through is I'm not afraid of it anymore. I'm like, oh, I feel anxious. I'm going to allow myself to feel anxious. And I know I have XYZ tools that I can then pull on in the moment that work for me. So if I feel anxious, my world's not going to fall apart. Yeah. And that being huge for you. Yeah. And then I know for you, the food piece is also a really big surprise as well. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Yes. So I've always had issues with my gut, or I've always felt just uncomfortable. And you know too that I have had I have a thyroid condition, and I love food. So even though it was making me feel bad, I didn't really notice it before. And until this program, and when we actually got to the food part, I had already cut out dairy. For the most part, I was still eating like a little bit of feta cheese, and but once I was able to feel what it feels like to actually feel good, then it became easier to actually cut out the dairy and the grain, and the gluten was huge for me. There were days that I would sometimes look like I was, pregnant because I'm somebody that works out every day. I like to think of myself as pretty healthy, but the stuff that I was putting into my body was not right for me. And so once I cut that out, the fog lifted. I was somebody who had foggy brain all the time. I used to go to the doctor and tell him, like, my head feels heavy. Like, I don't know how to, I was just look at him like, I don't know how to tell you anything else other than I feel heavy and off balance. And he's like, oh, it's just your thyroid. It's just your thyroid. Okay. But once I cut that food out, within like a week, and the sugar, I was probably 80% better just from cutting a week after.
Wow.
And once I was taking, the minerals and the probiotics and all of that stuff in the mix that you helped me with, I felt calm. I didn't realize, like, after we did the hair test, how depleted I actually was. And then within like a week of taking the supplements, I felt a sense of calm, and my stomach has been, it's amazing. I have abs again.
Woo!
Yes. So all of that, it's just the food part. Even if anybody takes anything away from it, it's food. Food is medicine, and I've learned that. And yeah, I know it's not always easy to cut it out, and you want this treat every now and then, but I tell you, once you know the feeling of feeling good, then it's hard to beat. Yeah.
Yeah. I just got goosebumps with you saying that, right? Because
Yeah. Yeah.
food is medicine. And I think we've forgotten that. And, a lot of the journey is about you learning, like, oh, here's how I can feel. Do I want to choose my food, or do I want to choose the feeling? So you get to be back in the driver's seat on what's more important for me, like eating the food I like or feeling and doing XYZ, right?
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. I did have moments of weakness, and, on the weekends or something. And I, for one, with your program, learned about histamines, which I had no idea about. And I'm somebody who reacts to that. And I learned that. And so I like to have a glass of wine. And wine is really high in histamines. And I couldn't understand why I felt, even after having one glass of wine, the next day I felt horrible. And it was because of that. And that shitty feeling doesn't feel good.
No.
And so, I mean, like, I've had my weaknesses too, and I've cheated for sure, but I've also given myself grace. And like I said, that feeling of feeling good outweighs the bad. So I've probably said no more than I've said, yeah, sure, I'll have that. So that's been nice.
Amazing. And when we circle back to driving, then, you started feeling like you couldn't go anywhere, and you sort of walked us through some of the strategies that you're using. So have you been able to drive to places that you haven't before, or kind of go outside of, your bubble wrapped zone that you created for yourself? Like, did that change at all in the program?
Yeah. So I live in a very small little town, and so for me to go anywhere other than my little grocery store, and my kids' school is down over the hill. But for us to go to any big place where, there's a movie theater or there's restaurant, like a lot of restaurants, and it's a half an hour drive for me. And that's where my kids all play sports. I have 3 that are heavily into basketball, and like they would travel, they're playing all winter, and they're playing all spring, and they're playing through the summer, and they have camps. And I was never one. I was always that one that was just like, mommy doesn't feel really good today. So I would chalk myself up. I would get so nervous thinking, okay, these kids have a game this weekend. And even the week before, I'm already putting it in my head that I can't do it.
Yeah.
And so I'm letting it build up, and it builds up all week long. And then I'm like, okay, Papa's going to take you, or Grammy's going to take you, or even a friend, or you're going to go with your friends. And then say my husband comes home the next day, and I'm like, okay, well, mommy and daddy will come to watch your game the next day. because I have somebody to go with me, right?
Yeah.
But now, I think it was probably a week, 2 weeks in, probably your program, I was driving to basketball every day, and going to all the games alone, and going to visit my brother who lives a half an hour away, and
Mm.
visiting. Typically, I'm the type, okay, if I make it to this point A, I'll do this, and there was no extra. Like, I was so depleted
Mm.
from what it took to actually go to point A that there was no, okay, we can't go here after, or we can't
Mhm.
go here after, because I was just drained from the anxiety. And so we've had a lot of fun this summer. I've, going to basketball, and then after treating them to, an ice cream,
Mhm.
or playing at the park, or visiting my brother, and then not coming home until 9 and 10 o'clock at night. Like, that's been awesome. And, going to dentist appointments, which is another half an hour away, like in the opposite direction. And I was never one to do that stuff unless my mom was around or my husband was home, and we would go together. And I've done it. I've done it all. And it
Mhm.
was my daughter's 11th birthday, on the weekend, and her and I and my two other daughters, we went and had a day of, getting party supplies and filling up balloons, and yeah, we just made it a day. And um I've never done that in so long. So it's been, yeah, it's so good. It's the feeling so good that there have been moments that I was super emotional over it, because I haven't been able to do that in so long. So it's
Yeah,
been
I'm
really nice.
feeling a little emotional listening to you
Yeah.
actually. Talk
Yeah.
about being able to do, it sounds like things that you've always wanted to be able to do, and now you
Mhm.
can do them and feel like you're in the
Mhm.
moment with them, and do these things with your kids that you'd envisioned you can now do. Am I capturing that right?
Mhm. 100%. It's, my kids have even noticed. And that's been huge for me too. And like I said, not feeling it, not feeling all the anxiety was worse than letting it, just stopping and feeling it for a moment. Not to say that I haven't had moments where I feel anxious or overwhelmed, but it's never got to the point that I have said, no, I'm
Mhm.
not going to go, or I'm not going to. I was somebody that couldn't even go into Costco, like,
Mm.
and because I have like the lights always bothered me, the space was big, and I'm not a crowd person. And like a month ago, I started to get anxious, was going to Costco, and my husband, typically I'm like, you go in, I'm staying in the truck.
Mhm.
And I was just like, no, I'm going in today. And he's like, what? He's like, yes, come on, like, let's go. And I did. And typically I would be like, you know, you, I'll just, I would stay right with him, right? Like,
Mhm.
and I would be so overstimulated that sometimes I wouldn't even be able to, like, I'd have to get him to, okay, we need this, we need this, we need this, because I just couldn't. I was so focused on what my heart was doing or what my breath was doing. And there were times that I'd be like, okay, I got to go to the truck. I got to go. And I would bolt. And so he just was like, I'm like, you go get that stuff. I'm just going to shop on my own. And he's like, really? You sure? I'm like, yeah, go ahead. Like, and I just shopped and I bought clothes for
Mhm.
back to school and I bought cool stuff. And then we met up. I took a moment, because I felt that feeling of overwhelm, because there was a lot of people in there. And I just stopped for a minute, took a few breaths, and then saw him over, wandering around, and I give him a wave. And I was just like, hey, and he's just like, we met up and then we finished our trip and we left at the same time. Like, it was nice. Whereas before, it was like, nope, see ya. I can't, I'm out. And yeah, so we've had a lot of good times for sure.
And that story, it's incredible because you speak to the small nuances that get impacted when you have anxiety running the show, right? Like most people who haven't struggled with anxiety, they're like, oh yeah, it's Costco. Or like, yeah, you go in together, you buy what you need, and then you leave. And when you're like, no, I can't go in, they're like, but why? Like nothing scary's in there. And so it's really hard to understand like the small details of how anxiety can play out to the point where like you're shopping, air quotes, but you're not really shopping. Like you're not present at all. You're just like the shell of you is present.
No.
And so you did such a good job of illustrating the difference of what happens when your body's calm and when you have strategies that work, you can go back into those situations and actually be present in them.
Yeah, that was actually one of my, and I still write it in my book every day, is I will be present and I will live in the moment, is one of my affirmations I write every day, because I have to remind myself. And when I do, it plays in your head over and over. You are present. You will be present, versus when I don't do that stuff, when I don't take time to, work on my mindset, then those negative thoughts go back in. And, the next time I go, those negative thoughts are going to creep back in and, and I might run away again. But that's why mindset has really, really helped me, like, tenfold. Like, it's been
it's very clear too. And the examples, right? How you're not afraid of your anxiety anymore. It's like, oh, here it is. I see you, move through it, and then kind of continue doing what you're doing. And that's the difference, right? Anxiety it's a normal part of human emotion. But when it becomes a problem is when it gets so overwhelming that it controls what we do instead of us moving through it. There's a big difference in how that plays out.
Oh, yeah, it's crazy. 10 years with living, I guess you could say, a mediocre existence. You almost always having to think so much, like to the point it's exhausting about before you do anything. Whereas, and you look at your friends and your family, and they just do, right? They just go and they don't question it. But, for someone who can't, or, who's been taught, who believes wholeheartedly that they can't do it, it's not a good way to live. It's not, and I, like I said, I was just at my wit's end, and I happened to come across you, and I am so thankful that I did. I believe that everything happens for a reason. And, I thank you.
It's been a pleasure. I mean, that's why I do what I do. I like to turn my own experience of anxiety into a space for others to not have to go through that. Or if they go through it, to realize there's a way out of it, right? There's a way to reclaim and do the things that you want to do again. You're not stuck. And you so very nicely shared that you're not, right? You taught I think a lot of women that are listening to this, that you don't have to stay like that.
No, I hope so. Because it's real. It's, you know, if you're willing to, if you're like me and you're at your wit's end, and, you know, you're ready to put in the work. I think that's another misconception is that, you know, it's not here's a pill, here's a quick fix. Like, do the work. And it's like anything. When you put work into anything, it's going to produce, you know, good things, you know. So that's the way I've went into it, looking at it, and that I was very determined. And yeah, good things happened. And so yeah.
I love it. Well, thank you so much, Jessica. And thanks everyone for listening.
Thank you.